Good afternoon. Welcome to the task force on closing the digital divide in California. My name is Thurmond, and I'm honored to serve as the state superintendent of public instruction, and along with Senator Leyva, one of the co-chairs of this task force. In a moment, you'll have a chance to hear from the legislators who make up the task force. And throughout the course of the conversation today, you'll have a chance to hear from a number of folks who are working to address technology needs of our 6 million students. As you all know, we are facing a pandemic, a health challenge of worldwide proportions, unlike any that we have seen before. What that has meant is that since March 13th, most of our students, and now all of our students, receive their education through a form of distance learning, where the teacher and the student are in different locations. While it's possible for students to be able to participate in distance learning in traditional ways where they receive a packet, we think it's important that students have access to technology and devices that will become the tools to help them to be successful through distance learning. A computer certainly cannot replace a teacher, but it's a great tool to help accentuate what a teacher can provide. And we need to make sure that our students have them. Today, you'll hear about more than 200,000 California students who still need to have a device at home, a Chromebook or a laptop or a tablet. You'll also hear that more than 200,000 students still need to have access to the internet at home so that they can complete the assignments that are being provided by their teachers. This task force has a simple mission: to work to close the digital divide. Clearly, we start now with our focus on how we respond to the pandemic. How do we ensure that during the pandemic, our students get access to the technology that they need to be successful in school? At the same time, we see this as an opportunity to go even further, to say that once and for all, we will close this digital divide that has separated our students between those who have and those who do not. We have to let internet flow like electricity and make sure that students throughout our state have the ability to have access and have access to working equipment that allows them to stay connected to their educators and staying connected to their school communities. And so that is our mission of this task force. I'm honored for those who've joined it. I am going to now turn it over to my co-chair, Senator Leyva, who will give us some opening remarks, and then we'll hear from the other members of this, other legislators who are members of this task force. Senator Leyva.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Thurmond. It's a pleasure for me to be on this task force, and I thank everyone, the members and all of our internet providers for being on this call today. And I appreciate your willingness to meet with us and explain how your companies have been working to close the digital divide, which we know adversely affects so many of our students. We know that about 16% of California students do not have access to the internet. The digital divide has been a significant issue for certain communities for many years. The needs and the gaps have only intensified and been highlighted during this time of COVID-19 and school closures. It is critical in these times when students are expected to receive their education through distance learning that each and every one of them has the opportunity to learn. That means computer devices and sometimes more importantly, connectivity. I expect to hear from each of you today a commitment to ensure that these needs are met and the gaps are closed. Our students can't wait, nor should they have to. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Senator Leyva. We'll first hear from Assemblymember Jim Wood, who joins us by phone. Assemblymember Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, and thank you for putting this together. Senator McGuire, and I won't speak for him other than to say the two of us have been working on this issue of closing the digital divide since we were elected in 2014, and sadly it feels like we haven't made a huge amount of progress. It seems that in one of our more recent disasters, a flood in the little area of the lower river in the Guerneville area, people actually had the best internet coverage ever out there when these, what do they call them, cows that were brought in and deployed so that they could have internet access. But typically out there, people go to the library and sit in the parking lot and connect that way. And in this day and age, that's really unacceptable. So I hope that we find ways to close this gap. It's critical not only for education, but for healthcare and for business. So thank you so much for the opportunity to participate.
Thank you, Assemblymember Wood. And we look forward to having the opportunity today to talk about those devices that are on wheels, the CAL that you referred to. Thank you for that. Next, we're going to hear from Assemblymember Cecilia Aguiar-Curry. Assemblymember Aguiar-Curry.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Thurmond, for forming this task force to work on closing the educational digital divide. It is a privilege to join you here, all of you today, and to work and to bridge the gaps in broadband service across our state. It is critical now more than ever to work collaboratively to ensure all Californians are well informed and can access the support services we need to survive this pandemic and protect our families. As an Assembly member and as the former mayor of Winters, I have seen how broadband can transform a community by connecting students and parents to teachers and their families and their loved ones and our workforce to the increasingly tech-driven economy. Recent studies have found that 1 in 8 California homes still do not have internet access, and research shows that disadvantaged communities and communities of color face even higher numbers of students and families who remain disconnected. At a time when we should be using ever-evolving technology to make revolutionary advances in things like ag tech, education, telehealth, the technology state still struggles to connect people to the internet. I just got off the phone with one of my school districts in Arbuckle, California, and she went through all the numbers that she needs. And we have been fighting for her for the past 18 months, maybe 2 years now. And she has yet to have good connectivity and unable to distribute the platforms to the K through 5th graders at this time. I just want to say I look forward to working with you, Mr. Superintendent, and our colleagues and stakeholders to serve the most vulnerable students and families, to keep them from falling behind, and long-term to finally take seriously the need to close the digital divide in our state. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Assemblymember Aguiar-Curry. Next, we'll hear from Assemblymember Miguel Santiago.
I think everybody hit right smack where it's supposed to be. We absolutely need to close the digital divide. And unfortunately, it's taken a pandemic for us to get everybody serious about this. But we're not going to stop here. And it shows worse. We're in the worst of crises. And there's no way, unexcusable, that we have a large percentage of students who have no conductivity, no electronics, no way to communicate. And I think this is just a start. And thank you for putting this together.
Thank you, Assemblymember Santiago. Next, we'll hear from Assemblymember Autumn Burke.
For letting me be a part of this task force. For those of you who know, I represent the 62nd district, which includes Inglewood Unified School District, which before COVID-19, we had a massive disparity facing our students in our schools in Inglewood. Ensuring our kids receive the same quality education as everyone else was already a full-time job. And as you can imagine, the virus has only threatened to widen that gap for us. I've really made it a focus of my time in the legislature to make sure that opportunities and resources provided to the western portion and the affluent portion of my district were also provided to the eastern portion of our district. And it's really important to me to shine a light to these opportunities and resources that the eastern portion of my district has had to go without. For a little bit of data, IUSD is currently in state receivership. I know there are other disadvantaged areas like Inglewood that are more susceptible to being left behind than others. I've heard that 20% of our students in California, that's 1.2 million students, are unable to access the internet at home or have reliable computers. Unfortunately, IUSD, the percentage is significant. Right now in IUSD, there are roughly 7,500 students who are in need of or need a new laptop. Their ADA is about 8,200, which means there's nearly the entire district in need of assistance. That assistance is needed now and not tomorrow. Access to high-speed internet is critical. If classes are going to be held on Zoom or video conferencing platforms, It's easy for many of us to take for granted that technology options we have at our fingertips. It's critical that we remember that for many families, they simply just can't afford it. Families in my district shouldn't have to choose between providing education for their kids or feeding them. Education is a constitutional right in California, which means that as education changes, we as a government must be ready to adjust and adapt. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this committee to do that. Also, I'd like to say that as chair of Revenue and Tax Committee, I've seen a number of bills introduced over the years aimed to helping school district and teachers. This included exempting school districts from having to pay sales tax on purchasing of equipment, providing tax credits to teachers who spend their own money on classroom supplies, making it easier for school districts to raise revenue, and everything in between. And many of those bills have not become. The underlying goal of subsidizing purchases made by schools and teachers is something that we may have to revisit. And I include teachers in this conversation because I know that there are teachers out there right now who are spending their own time and money to make sure that all of our kids are able to access online classes. I appreciate this task force that will give us a chance to pull together all of our collective resources to facilitate donations, resources for all of our at-risk students and districts. And as we work to address this polarizing divide, that the effects of our most vulnerable students, I'm committed to working with all the stakeholders and identify the shortcomings and doing whatever is necessary to provide real solutions for our students and our school districts in need of connectivity and, most importantly, parity. I really don't want my students left behind anymore. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this.
Thank you, Assemblymember Burke. Next, we will hear from Senator Mike McGuire, who will make his comments by telephone. Senator McGuire.
Thank you so much, Mr. Superintendent. Mr. Superintendent, I want to first and foremost say thank you for your leadership, for convening us on this critical issue. I want to say thank you to Co-Chair Leyva for her work, as well as the governor for his focus. And as Assemblymember Wood said earlier, and to Assemblywoman Aguiar Curry, I think rural California has been screaming from the top of our lungs about the digital divide for years. A few hours north of San Francisco, up Highway 101, folks literally step back in time. Lack of cell service, lack of high-speed internet, and high rates of poverty is impacting our kids. And we're looking at generations of impact. Access to high-speed internet in California, the land of opportunity, the home of Silicon Valley, should no longer be a luxury, it's a necessity. And being very candid, Mr. Superintendent, which I'm grateful that you've brought us together to develop collaborative solutions. Solutions have been advanced in rural California that would provide local private companies, smaller companies, and potential public options to move forward. But every step of the way, telecom has fought the access into many of its fiber lines. And that has been incredibly frustrating because the kids are the ones who are suffering. If we take a look at rural California compared to urban California, about 80% of the population in urban metropolitan areas in this state have connectivity. It's 89% in Santa Clara County. In counties like Trinity, it's 30%. And we look at counties like Humboldt and Del Norte, it's just a smidge above that 30%. I hope that we can move this task force forward to give all Californians and our kids who are so desperate connect high-speed internet for all. It's 2020, and it's about damn time, and really grateful, sir, for your leadership and for bringing us all together today. Thank you so much, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Senator McGuire. The additional member of this task force from the legislature is Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia, who we believe will be checking in soon, and we'll hear from him when he is available.
Mr. Superintendent, we are here. We are here. Willie and Red,
Assemblymember.
Everyone's really touched on the importance of this group. For me, it's an honor that you've selected many of the legislators to be part of this work group. Many of us have worked on this issue collectively, along with many of our providers who are with us today. So it's like bringing the band back together specifically to work on this issue. And so it's great to get together today on the backs of the governor's announcement and the work that you're doing together. Looking forward to moving this agenda forward in the interests of both our rural parts of California and our urban settings. There's money out there. There is public policy in place, and clearly a will on the part of the task force members. And we're looking forward to collaborating with our ISPs to get this job done. So thank you again for bringing us together.
Thank you, Assemblymember Garcia. Sorry that I did not see you sitting there. I don't know how I could have missed you there in the Assembly chamber, but always glad to see Assembly Green and Senate Red, and we're happy to work with all of you. Do want to note just that today's proceedings are also being streamed live on Facebook Live, and we do know that many want to make their input known, and we welcome those comments that you send across Facebook Live. We also want to thank all of the representatives from the various companies who you'll hear from today. You'll hear from representatives from some technology companies, and you'll hear from representatives of internet service providers. All of them have made some commitments that factor into what the governor announced earlier today, commitments of hundreds of millions of dollars to support California students, and in some cases, direct commitments of technology. What you will hear throughout the day, and as you've heard from our legislators who really set the stage and really clearly stated the need, what you will hear is that more than 270,000 students need a device at home, a laptop, a Chromebook, or a tablet. You will hear that similarly, the need for those to have access to the internet is also upwards of 270,000. And you'll hear updates being provided in real time. The staff at the California Department of Education has surveyed more than 1,000 districts in our state. And literally, our staff has called districts to verify the information that has been provided. We'd like to thank the Association of School Administrators and our Association for County Superintendents and our California School Boards Association for working with us to provide that information. I want to thank our staff at CDE and particularly Mary Nicely, who has been working with our team here to literally fact check those needs. And she will be available on this Zoom call for some of our questions and places where we need technical assistance. And so what we learned today in the governor's announcement in his press conference is that to date, the commitments that have been provided to California for devices total some 70,000 Chromebooks, laptops, and other types of devices. And the number of hotspots that have been donated is in the neighborhood of 100,000. And so a good start, but clearly much more work that we need to do. We say thank you, but we say we're going to keep doing this until we reach the finish line and we get this right for all of our communities. I would like to open this meeting by acknowledging some who've made those commitments and who were highlighted in the governor's announcement today. And then we'll hear from others, from internet service providers who also have made commitments, and they'll have a chance today to tell us in their own words their commitments. And of course, they'll be asked some questions from legislators and myself about other additional commitments that we deem necessary. But first, I want to acknowledge Rena Davis, who's available. And Rena, you'll get a minute just to say something on behalf of Google. We thank you for the commitment of 4,000 Chromebooks and 100,000 hotspots. We have Rena Davis. We're prepared to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Superintendent. And I want to thank all of the folks involved in this task force. I think this is an amazing group of people that will be able to help advance this issue forward. At Google, we know that connectivity and access to the internet is extremely important for students to have in order to continue their studies. And during this unprecedented time, it was really important to us to ensure that we were taking care of our home state and looking forward to help addressing the problem through our donation. So look forward to hearing from everyone today and part of this discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Davis, and thank you to Google. We look forward to continuing to work with you as we continue to push forward here on closing the digital divide. One other additional announcement, just want to acknowledge another partner who helped in surveying the school districts, and that is our Association of Small School Districts throughout the state. We also thank you in particular because many of your districts are the beneficiaries of the donations, in the places where we know the support is needed the most. Thank you, Small School Districts Association. Next, we'd like to hear from a representative from Amazon. So we have Sally Kay from the public policy team. We thank Amazon for the commitment of 10,000 tablet devices. We'll take a minute to hear from Sally Kay.
Including Amazon here today. I'm excited to join the coalition of companies answering the call from the governor and first partner to help those students who are most vulnerable by donating the 10,000 Fire 7 tablets to the foundation to help middle school and high school students with distance learning. This California-focused effort is part of a larger $5 million device donation Amazon's made to help folks in need amid COVID-19. We've teamed up with hospitals, schools, and other community organizations around the globe to supply those devices to those in need, to helping frontline healthcare workers safely communicate with patients, or making it easier for students to learn while schools and libraries are closed. But we've also thought about how to leverage our logistics network to assist in the effort of distance learning. We'll be using our delivery network to support LA Unified District with approximately 20,000 contactless doorstep deliveries of LAUSD issued devices direct to student homes to support that remote learning. And additionally, in response to LAUSD, we were able to set up a call center with Amazon Web Services to field IT questions, provide remote support, and enable staff to answer calls. Recognizing the enormous impact closures have had on school communities, we're also offering free online computer science classes. Our program, Amazon Future Engineer, is providing all middle school and high school classes, including advanced placement through Adhesive, our partner. And those free classes include virtual robotics missions for grades 2 through 12, online introductory and AP computer science courses for grades 6 through 12. We've also partnered up with Code Virginia to offer free online AP computer science test prep sessions twice a week leading up to AP exams. And finally, our program, Amazon Future Engineer and Boot Up Elementary Computer Science Initiative, is our effort to bring computer science education to more than 1,000 elementary schools. That program precedes COVID-19. It's a no-cost 3-year on-site professional development for elementary school teachers to learn content and pedagogy of computer science education. We know it's not a great time for schools to apply for that program, so we've put that on hold and can hold spots for districts if they let us know their intent to apply. Finally, we're working with school districts to set up a celebrity book club with Snapchat so that students can buy books recommended by their favorite celebrities on Snap, and then students are able to order those books as well. We're excited to work with Superintendent Thurmond and your team as the department gets these tablets into the hands of students. And I'd like to thank all the folks, Mary Nicely, Jessica Howard, and Ben Sheeta for helping make the donation happen.
Thank you, Sally, for those commitments, and thank you, Amazon, for all of those commitments. Next, we'd like to hear from Rob Osborne, who represents the California Public Utilities Commission. Through the work of many in state government, our legislators, our governor, the Department of Finance, and all the staff at the CPUC itself, we are pleased to be able to highlight this next commitment of more than $30 million that will be available to support devices and access to internet for many students in our state. It comes at a great time and makes us all proud that our California government is leading this way. We'd like to hear from you, Mr. Osborne. Thank you for being available.
Thank you, Superintendent. So today, the governor announced 2 CPUC initiatives intended to help students affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The commission oversees 6 universal service programs, and over the past 2 weeks, we looked at which of those 6 could be leveraged to help students in need and be leveraged quickly. The commission's partnering with the California Department of Education and the 4 largest mobile providers to deliver broadband to students who lack the means to do remote learning. 2 of the key initiatives underway are, first, as the superintendent mentioned, $25 million from the California Teleconnect Fund. This fund provides a 50% discount for broadband to schools, libraries, hospitals, and other nonprofits. Nearly all the California schools participate in the Teleconnect Fund. The discounts can be applied to services between the dates of April 1st and September 30th, or until students return to the classroom, whichever is first. Based on our budgetary estimates, this $25 million could pay for up to 200,000 hotspots. The Department of Education will be issuing a letter to school districts with instructions to apply, and they will coordinate and direct schools to apply to the CTF program. And then the program will provide approved applicants with directions to activate the discount. The other initiative is $5 million from the California Advanced Services Fund. This fund subsidizes broadband deployment and adoption to help close the digital divide. This initiative would award the Department of Education up to $5 million and would give the Department of Education the authority to approve projects for eligible applicants and projects as described in a proposal that we've set out. The Department of Education will act as the facilitator and in the distribution of funding to schools in evaluating the schools' needs and the districts. And I want to thank Jeff Ballou and Mary Nicely at the Department of Education for their support and partnership in getting these initiatives off the ground. And I also wanted to let you know that the PUC has posted a searchable map with school districts and internet service providers and their COVID-19 offerings so that you can go find what providers are at each school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. And again, thank you, Mary and Jeff and everyone at the Department of Education who's worked with the CPUC to help to move these resources to the communities where they are most needed. Not represented today, but also among those we want to feature and spotlight for their contribution are T-Mobile and Sprint. They were announced today by the governor and have been spotlighted on a number of occasions. And their contribution and the commitment that they've made represents some 13,000 tablets from T-Mobile and Sprint. And so we also want to recognize that contribution. We know that there's more commitments, and we want to hear from those. In just a few moments, we will have moderated by Senator Leyva a discussion with our representatives from internet service providers who are glad to host as our guests today for frank conversation about what has been provided, what more can be provided, what more is needed, and how we work together to close the digital divide. The way this task force will work is that we will always have frank conversation. As Senator McGuire has said, we will talk about barriers and challenges. We can have difficult conversations, but we will work with civility and we'll work together. And everyone who is a guest of this committee, this task force, will be treated with respect and civility. We will have those candid conversations, but work together to get through the difficult times to better times for our students. We want to further set the stage and just hear 2 or 3 minutes from a few representatives who can highlight what the need means for students in their area. We're pleased to be joined by representatives of 2 different districts in our state who can add some emphasis and provide us with specific context about what that need means. To present first, we will hear from Edgar Lampkin, who is a superintendent of the Williams School District. Superintendent Lampkin, we're ready for your remarks.
Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you. As a superintendent for Williams Unified School District, we're a small rural agricultural area with about 1,400 students. And in a county that has about 4 communities similar to ours. The rest of the land is pretty much agricultural, as well as the Sacramento River going through. What this represents for us, this situation is a huge challenge. We have been working for about 3 years now, 4 years, trying to find a way to see how we can get connectivity into our area. A lot of our students, families do not have internet connectivity. We have only one provider back when that particular area was able to obtain access. Only one company purchased the rights. So Frontier at this point is the provider. What that means is that any other company that comes in to try to provide internet access has to pay royalties to Frontier. Having said that, many of the companies have backed off from trying to make any connectivity. Number one, the number of people that are there is not cost effective. And so therefore, what that has done for us is it has limited the level of access for internet connectivity with our families. In my particular community, 95% of my student population is Hispanic, Latino. About 91% of the families are socioeconomically disadvantaged. If they have purchased any internet, which is limited, what happens is for $10, they can get access to internet. But what that provides as far as accessibility is very limited. Pretty much, it really doesn't work to meet even the most slightest educational need. So we are facing a huge disadvantage, a huge inequity for our students. I'm speaking not just on behalf of our district. Many of the districts in Northern California are very similar and are in the same dire situation. There is a tower that is owned by Sprint, not being used. It was purchased way back when towers were being built to help universities establish connectivity for the future online communication and classes that would be taking place. That tower pretty much has been sleeping since. We have tried to ask for access to that tower so that we could then work with EduNet to be able to put some connectivity, establish satellites that would face and provide access, internet access for our students. We have not been able to accomplish that task up to date. So we are in a situation right now where we are, today we started our distance learning with our students. Our teachers did a fantastic job these past 2 weeks as we provided packets and resources for our students to be able to engage in learning while our teachers were being trained on, all of our teachers are being trained on how to put together playlists, how to develop online instruction, and be able to give students that level of access. Having said that, today we started our day, our first day of distance learning. I'm sad to say that over 1/3 of our students were not able to access internet. They were not able to participate. We did have packets, but those packets were also tied to the playlists. So they weren't able to really understand what it was that they needed to do. We're needing to now look at what are some packets that we can use at this point until we can find internet connectivity for our students. It's a huge disadvantage. It's a huge inequity. And I'm glad to see, and I want to thank all of you for coming together to see what can be done to help address this problem. Being in the trenches and seeing what is happening, it's incredible to see the inequities that are there. They are stark, they are way more evident, but at the same time, I do see a lot of people trying to see what they can do to help make this happen, to be able to really truly give all of our students and our future citizens an opportunity to not be at a disadvantage, but to have the opportunity to be able to play in an equal playing field by having that level of access that has information that they need in order to grow as future citizens of our community. Thank you again for the opportunity to share with you. That is our situation, and we are looking to see what kind of support and help we can get as well.
Thank you, Superintendent Lampkin, for providing that context. As you talked about the point about 1/3 of your students who were not able to participate today in the distance learning kickoff, it's certainly very sobering. I think you raised the point that even though we can do distance learning with packets, that there are still many, many limitations and disparities associated with that. And so thank you for that. We invite you to work with us on this task force. We want to keep your examples at the forefront of our mind. And while all the legislators aren't together in one place because we are trying to role model the importance of social distancing, I want you to know that all your state officials and elected officials, we all stand united in doing all that we can to help you and your students and your families and many, many districts like who have similar needs throughout our state. So please continue to work with us, and thank you for what you've shared today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent. Now we'll also hear a vignette from our Chief Academic Officer at Inglewood Unified School District. We are pleased to have Bernadette Lucas, who will provide some context for us. Ms. Lucas.
Good afternoon. I'm so excited to be here. I thank everyone for your commitment to this, and Superintendent Thurmond for convening this task force. I cannot express how important this is. So to give a little context, Assemblywoman Burke did a beautiful job sharing much of what's going on in Inglewood Unified. I'd only like to add that in addition to a hardware divide, there persists an instructional technology divide. So not only do we have to close the hardware gap, but we also have to support our teachers who, in our case, are doing an amazing job in trying to bridge this gap. But my dissertation was on the instructional technology gap, how tech is used in instruction, not just the hardware gap. So that's an issue that I hope that this task force can speak to as well. How do we provide our teachers with ongoing professional development and support as they bridge this divide in this unanticipated situation? So there's that. Just to let you know, we are involved in a collaboration with Spectrum that is totally voluntary on the part of our parents. We're also working with the mayor of Inglewood. So Spectrum is providing 60 days of free internet to families that have free and reduced meal status. And the mayor of Inglewood, Mayor Butts, is providing funding for an additional 30 days. So I want to highlight a partnership between the municipality and the school district to bring 90 days of no-cost internet to our families, but that's 90 days. And we know that this is going to be needed after this pandemic subsides. Lack of access to internet persists for many of our parents and our students. So that's why we had to enter into this partnership with them. And our parents are eagerly awaiting that for their children. So in addition to that, our students are sharing devices with siblings and parents. So their access to technology is limited to certain parts of the day, meaning that they can't access sometimes when their teacher is online, ready to provide instruction. So in addition to the lack of internet access for the vast majority of our families, there's a lack of the number of devices in the home, given the number of children in the home. So we have distributed over 2,500 of our devices to our students to help close the gap, but it's still not fully closed. Again, we've provided professional development for teachers because our teachers have come to us and said, we want professional development in how to use Google Classroom and how to use Zoom and other web-based tools to provide instruction for students. And moreover, something as simple as how do you check attendance online is coming up. How do we track student participation, the grading issues related to teaching in a 100% digital environment. So like Superintendent Lampkin shared, we share many of the same challenges, and we're looking for creative solutions to solve those. But I did very much want to highlight the instructional divide in addition to the hardware divide.
Thank you, Dr. Lucas.
That's okay.
And as you mentioned that your dissertation was focused on the instructional needs as it relates to technology, consider yourself drafted for the task force. We want to hear about your research and your research as you're putting it into practice at your district. Thank you for the context that you have shared. We invite you and the team at Inglewood Unified to work closely with this task force on how we can support your students and families and educators, and how we can support students, families, and educators across our state.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lucas.
Thank you, Superintendent Thurmond.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to turn it over to Senator Leyva, who's going to take us from here. I do want to just say an email address that we'll mention a few times. Many of you have contacted us about how you can work with the task force, and you can send your note to Digital Divide Task Force at cde.ca.gov. We will mention that throughout today's proceedings. I also want people to know that, yes, many of you who have asked can continue to help and donate devices or dollars to purchase equipment and devices, and that is at donatech@cde.ca.gov. Without further ado, we'll turn it over to Senator Leyva, who will carry us further.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, and thank you again to everyone who is on the call. What I would like to do at this time is read the 4 questions that we gave to each of the internet providers, and then we're going to ask them to answer those questions. The providers that we have on today are Comcast, Charter Spectrum, Verizon, Cox, and AT&T. So I'll start by reading the questions to make sure everyone who's listening knows what the questions are. Number one, what are you currently doing to support the technology needs of students during the COVID-19 pandemic? Number two, we have heard stories in some cases of the families of low-income students being offered free internet, then being told at the time of sign up that a credit card and/or social security number must be provided. What will your company do to ensure that offers made to low-income families will not include any barriers to families accessing these resources? Number three, would you be willing to enable free guest or roaming access to anyone in your cellular service area, at least until students are safely able to return to school and no longer must rely solely on distance learning? Number four, what are your plans to expand service to rural and frontier communities that continue to not have either broadband or wireless connectivity? Would you be willing to supply cell on wheels trailers to areas such as Butte County on a more long-term basis until more permanent solutions are made available? These are the four questions that we posed to all of our internet providers, and I'm just going in the order as I wrote them down that I knew that they were on the call. So we're going to start with the representative from Comcast. If you can introduce yourself and answer the questions, that'd be fantastic.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karima Zaidan, and I'm joined here by my colleague Beth Hester, who runs, she's waving her hand, who runs government affairs and community impact for your great state. I'm actually out of our headquarters office in Philadelphia, which is why it's turning dark behind me. And I thank you, Superintendent, and all of the officials on this call for convening this really important panel. I run, along with a dedicated team and hundreds of Comcast employees across the company, our signature program called Internet Essentials, which is aimed at exactly this issue of closing the digital divide. And we've been doing this since 2011. And I'm reminded on this call that last year, for example, every fall, we travel around the country to raise awareness around what the digital divide is. And I don't think anyone now has a question of what the digital divide is. Research has shown for a long time that relevance, why this issue of why is the internet important to me? Why should I subscribe to it? The pandemic has shown us why it's relevant now for education, business, healthcare, all of the reasons that have been articulated on this call so far. And we've seen the need for internet during this time has been unprecedented. And for us, our program, although we started as our base on focusing on low-income families with school-age kids eligible for the school lunch program, we've since expanded it a number of times. We offer it to all low-income households in our footprint, so that is our focus. But the core of our program continues to be students, K-12, low-income students in our footprint, where we know the broadband adoption rate is significantly lower than the broadband adoption rate for all households in the country. So what we are doing in response to coronavirus, to COVID-19, number one, we have offered internet for all new subscribers until May 13th. Obviously, the situation is very fluid, changes every day, and conversations about next steps are underway. But this is what we have done since March 13th, 2 free months to sign up. We've raised the speeds to 25.3. We have offered amnesty to all households in our footprint who have any bad debt with Comcast, any current bad debt, any bad debt of any amount. You can sign up for Internet Essentials. We've paused data plans. We've made the commitments to keep America connected as the FCC has outlined. We will not disconnect anyone's internet service or assess late fees. We've opened up our Xfinity Wi-Fi hotspots to all folks, to anyone who needs them for free. So this is what we've done across Internet Essentials, which again is geared toward low-income households and Xfinity customers. The price for Internet Essentials, the normal price, not under these circumstances, is $9.95 per month. I'm answering questions 1 and 2 combined, by the way, and then my colleague will do 3 and 4. There's no contract, there's no installation fee, there's no credit check. That has been true since the launch of the program. We do not ask for any kind of credit card or any payment during the application process. The application itself can be done from a tablet or a smartphone easily, or there is a dedicated call center handling those applications. The application is offered in 7 different languages online that, again, you can take from your smartphone. We've advertised our response to COVID to communities across the country in 26 different languages. Of course, people can call the call center and reach any number of languages. I think the number is over 200, and apply for the service. And in terms of the specific question you asked about a social security number, so anytime you sign up for a Comcast service or product, we do ask that you provide a social security number if you are willing to provide a social or if you have one. If you're not, however, it's never been a barrier. We make it very clear during our application process that you can supply a quite extensive list of up to 28 different types of ID, some of which include a utility bill, a marriage license, a driver's license, whether it's domestic or foreign. So there are a number of different ways you can enter into the program to make that process seamless, and you can do everything from a smartphone, for example, by taking a picture of any one of these IDs, submitting it with your application. And as soon as you're approved, you will be delivered your modem. It's an all-in-one modem, including Wi-Fi into the home. So that's a bit about the application process. I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you have. We are trying to make it as easy as possible to get families connected all across our footprint. We have partnered with, at this point, it's probably thousands of school districts, specifically working on arrangements called sponsored service. So there are a number of school districts who've come to us and they're very interested in paying for service for their students. And we're able to develop an agreement with them where they will be billed for service after the free service ends for their students. It's one way they're trying to help out and working with us to get, again, as many families connected in a seamless way as possible. Happy to answer or entertain any more questions you have. Thank you for your time here.
Thank you, Karima. I'd just like to know what the purpose of the Social Security number is. I understand you're saying you asked for it, but if people can't provide it, they can provide something else. So if that's the case, why would they need to provide the Social Security number at all?
Sure. So it really speaks to, it's more company-wide, not unique to Comcast. Anytime you subscribe to any kind of service, we're just trying to ascertain the question of, are you who you say you are? So it's a question of fraud, which does happen, unfortunately, and that's one way to verify it, but it's certainly not the only way, and we make that really clear. And if there are any customer issues or questions that partners have, we will walk them through the application process.
Okay, great. And one last follow-up, the supplying a cell on wheels, would you be able to do something like that? Would you guys be willing to learn about something like that, especially for an area like Butte County?
Sure, I'm going to have Beth.
Yeah. So Beth Hester, VP of External Affairs. So I am based here in California. What you're describing is something that would be specific to the wireless community. So in the cable community, like for example, what we have is something called, we call it the WOW van because it's Wi-Fi on wheels. The limitation to the WOW van is that it still needs to be close to our network. So the network the network is there, and then you connect to the network, and then that van provides Wi-Fi in a geographic area. So the challenge is that if we don't have network nearby, then our version of the van doesn't work. which is different than the kind of LTE technology with the cows. I like saying that's cows.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. All right,
Absolutely.
let's move on to Charter Spectrum and let them answer the questions.
Yes, well, thank you for allowing me to participate today in the task force. I am Carrie Askew Bailey. I am the Regional Vice President of State Government Affairs in the West Region for Charter Spectrum. My territory covers 7 states. California is one among them. Like most of our fellow ISPs, we do have a low-cost program that we operate, year-round, 24/7. That is called Spectrum Internet Assist. It's available to households with a student in the school lunch program or to seniors who are on SSI. That program, again, remains operational during this crisis, but we've added some things to our offerings to specifically support families during this time. So anyone who is not currently a Spectrum customer can sign up for 60 days of internet service. Our speeds are up to 100 megabits per second. They get those 60 days for free. You have to have a student in K-12 or higher education in the household or a teacher in the household. So it really is geared toward educators and students as folks are trying to shift towards distance learning. We also, for our current customers, are offering 60 days of relief in terms of payments. So if you're having trouble, your household is impacted by COVID, you can give us a call and we have billing relief for folks for 60 days. We have opened our Wi-Fi hotspots across our footprint, so the public can now use those hotspots. And then, as some folks may be aware, we do run in several markets, including California, we have a news channel. And we think, of course, access to information is critical for families right now. And so we have opened up access to our news websites so that more folks can access the information that that we're broadcasting within our cable network. We also, as part of the information services, have donated about 1,000 slots for public service announcements on a weekly basis. And so those will reach all of our video subscribers, which is about 16 million folks nationwide. And then we are implementing some technology to combat illegal robocalls and spoofing of our domain name, because we think it's important during this time that we also help prevent folks from being scammed, thinking that it's us that's reaching out to them. And then very excited because we do think it supports families as well. We have recently announced some increases in current wages for workers on the front line. So our technicians and our call center employees received an hourly wage increase. And then we committed on an ongoing basis to increase our minimum wage paid at the company to $20 an hour by 2022. And then just today, again, in an effort to support families and help folks through, announced that we will not be conducting layoffs for at least 60 days. So we're trying to provide that support to families that they can be assured that their income, at least if they're working for Charter Spectrum, is not going to be impacted. And we do have about 10,000 employees in California. So we think it's a significant support to families here. The second question that was asked about credit, debit cards, and Social Security numbers, we don't require a credit or debit card. So that shouldn't be an issue when folks are calling us. And similarly with social security numbers, we don't require those of folks. So again, that shouldn't be an issue when folks are calling us. So I definitely hope you're not hearing that about our company. And then similar to the response, on roaming access and on the cows, we also, I think that's a better suited solution when you're talking about traditional cell providers. So we, again, have opened our Wi-Fi hotspots to the public, but similarly situated to the others. And then I will note really quickly, if I can, before opening for questions, there was a fourth question about sort of generally what we are doing to expand rural access. I am pleased to be able to say, last year Charter did apply for and received 3 grants through the CASF program here in California. It was our first round of applications. So we focused on 3 relatively small projects in Southern California. We will end up bringing broadband service to 179 households once we complete that build out. That is part of a larger expansion. Since 2016, we've brought broadband to 70,000 households within our footprint. And so we're very excited about those expansions. And we do look to be on track to file probably a dozen applications in the CASF program this year. We're putting the final touches on them. They're due in a couple weeks, but we're really excited to expand our participation in CASF this year.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I think what I'm going to do, because I do have some members of the task force that would like to ask questions, I will hold my questions and we will move on to our next represented company, which is Verizon. Thank you, Carrie.
Hi, it's Heidi Barstulia. I'm the California Vice President of Public Policy and Legal Affairs for Verizon. And thank you to Superintendent Thurmond, Senator Leyva, members of the Close the Digital Divide Task Force for your dedication and commitment to supporting and serving our communities. Many of you and many of you who spoke earlier today are really leading the charge in response to the coronavirus, and Verizon's so grateful for the opportunity to continue partnering with you. At Verizon, this pandemic really served as a reminder for why we do what we do, and that's to deliver reliable, best-in-class solutions, services, and connectivity expertise that are critical not only to your missions, but the missions of our customers at large. And I'd like to provide you just with a snapshot of the work we're doing at Verizon in support of ensuring access and connectivity for students. One of the first things we did in running to this crisis is really put our money where our mouth was and announced that Verizon would increase our 2020 capital guidance range by $500 million. And we believe this effort will accelerate Verizon's transition to 5G and help support the economy during this period of disruption and certainly recovery in the economy. What else is Verizon doing? So we're committed to serving and assisting at home or distance learning during this crisis. We've created education-specific rate plans for use by school districts during the crisis and are working with myriad school districts throughout California to explore workable options that are uniquely suited for each school district with whom we're speaking. And those are focused on both distance learning needs and also helping to bridge the digital divide. Verizon's offer to support the distance learning initiatives in California schools clearly aligns with the governor's call to action. As you heard today on the press conference, Verizon's actively working with not only the Department of Education and the superintendent, but also with the governor's administration and the first partner to explore the options for discounted unlimited service to 250,000 students in California to support wireless connectivity for education during the crisis. The LAUSD partnership that was recently announced is certainly a great example of our commitment to education. We worked with LAUSD to amend the commercial contract and to include a new commitment to students to help the district respond to distance learning needs and helping to bridge the digital divide there. As part of that agreement, Verizon's providing internet connectivity to LAUSD to enable it to provide internet access to 100,000 students who lack home internet connectivity. While we can't disclose, of course, the precise terms of the contract, we did agree to provide the internet connectivity to all within the school coverage area, and the agreement reflects a purchase of services by LAUSD that, while not a gift or donation, will be at no cost to students or family, and LAUSD will be responsible for identifying which students receive those benefits. There's also a Verizon Innovative Learning Schools program. We have a long history of providing support to schools and nonprofits across the country that are leveraging technology to create positive education outcomes for students. While Verizon's contributions to California schools are already extensive, we're pleased to report that we are augmenting that support and bringing our total contributions to California schools in 2020 to $80 million. And by expanding that program in the state of California, as well as offering an affordable Verizon distance learning service plan, we believe we can achieve a greater step towards digital equity moving forward. Today, the Verizon Foundation supports almost 27,000 students and 1,300 teachers at 40 Verizon Innovative Learning Schools. And as part of that, we have donated devices to be used in those programs as well. We've also tripled the monthly data allowance for schools that are in the Verizon Innovative Learning School program. And effective March 16, that connectivity included all tablets and laptops within the program, as well as any upgrades. We're also pleased to report that we're expanding our best wireless unlimited pricing to teachers who are keeping our students engaged in learning, as well as to some of our other first responders. And we've also announced that we have entered into a partnership with the New York Times to allow until July 6, 2020, free access to all NewYorkTimes.com teaching and learning resources from their learning network. And parents, students, and teachers can contact their schools to sign up for that program. We've committed $45 million to date in contributions and donations to nonprofits directed at serving students, healthcare, first responders, and small businesses. And of course, we've also signed the Keeping America Connected pledge. We have additional online learning tools that we've now made available and are rolling out later this month, which is all Verizon wireless customers will have up to 60 days of free access to valued education resources on applications such as Quizlet, Bookful, Chegg, and Epic. And teachers, parents, and students can visit those websites and sign up. Regarding the second question of hearing of some being offered free internet, as Verizon doesn't offer wide-scale home broadband service in California, you'll recall that Verizon sold their wireline company to Frontier some years ago. The offering to students would come through their school district. So given that the agreement is with the school district, we are not requiring any social security numbers since the school district is the customer of record. For question 3, enabling free guest or roaming services. So we talked somewhat through this, and the question is really more appropriately posed to the industry as a whole, rather than to each individual company by virtue of the complexity of how that would work. Generally, as long as a user's own service provider has coverage in a particular area, then roaming should be unnecessary. And roaming would be similarly unnecessary if the user has a Wi-Fi connection at home, as broadband capable wireless devices, of course, uniformly have Wi-Fi antennas now. But even so, roaming arrangements require coordination between different service providers, and no individual company would be able to just flip a switch, so to speak, and allow roaming on their service in a way that would be usable. Safeguards need to be in place to ensure that the service to a provider's own subscribers are not adversely affected by surges in non-subscriber traffic, and that person roaming onto a network is also ensured to get reliable service. And whether a device can roam onto another service provider's network depends on other factors. And those include such things as different service providers operate in different service bands, and a device that functions on one provider's network may not be compatible with another network. And a device may not function reliably if it's not been approved for security or technical compatibility and other important purposes on that provider's network. So that's really a conversation that needs to happen federally and have some guidance so that those aspects can be discussed fully. On question 4, plans to expand service in rural communities. So as you know, Verizon has invested billions of dollars to provide broadband in rural areas, and in fact, has deployed a nationwide 4G LTE wireless network that provides broadband to 98% of the US population, including 94% of the rural population. And we continue to upgrade those LTE speeds and to introduce innovative new services. In fact, the Verizon wireless network investment has helped to drive the deployment of rural fiber. We know the fiber networks that provide wireless backhaul to our company can also provide middle mile broadband connections to rural communities and serve as building blocks for other rural broadband deployments, and would be happy to continue speaking about that. In regard to Butte County, specifically, we do have coverage in Butte County, and our system is performing well there. Depending on where the coverage is needed, we'd certainly be willing to look at cows as an option. Those cell on wheels, of course, however, will need power and transport backhaul. If there's a lot of terrain in that particular area, we may not be able to get transport backhaul. We would look into microwave backhaul as an option as well, but that would be a situation where our network would not be performing. We can also look into satellite colts or spots, but those have a narrower footprint and effect, and so would be very narrowly tailored. We certainly stand ready to serve our customers at work, at home, and as they address these challenges moving forward. As we continue to adjust to the new and ever evolving new normal here, we hope you'll continue to call on Verizon to collaborate with you and to support you, those you serve, and all of our customers. And we intend to continue rising to this challenge. Appreciate the opportunity to participate in this task force.
Great, thank you very much, Heidi. We've got 2 providers left, that is Cox and AT&T. So I'm going to move to the representative from Cox, and I'm going to ask folks to try and stay to the 3 to 4 minutes. We did tell members we were going to try to be done by 5:30, and it is 5:13. So moving to the representative from Cox, please.
Sure thing. My name is Chanel Hawken. I'm the Vice President of Government and Public Affairs, so communications and also community affairs for Cox Communications. We serve predominantly Southern California, San Diego County, South Orange County, Palos Verdes, and Santa Barbara. We were founded by a school teacher. My husband is also a school teacher, so it really is, even before this pandemic, been a huge priority for us to focus on our education community. We've offering a lot of similar things that have already been mentioned in the interest of time. I will say our flagship Connect to Compete program, which is offered to our students K through 12, we have actually just extended that free service, normally $9.95, and we're doing that now for 4 months, so into mid-July. And San Diego Unified School District, the largest school district that's in our entire footprint nationwide, actually, we've been working extremely close, and that was the need for them to be able to have some credits, things that they needed over the summer for our students to be able to complete. So I will say my team has been working hand in hand with each and every school district. We pre-screen students with the school districts to make sure that we've got everybody that we possibly can to sign up. We've fast-tracked that process, so those students get priority. We've also lifted any data caps. We've done a huge partnership with Computers to San Diego Kids. They provide devices nationwide. We've been a partner for a long time, and this year we are announcing a $200,000 donation to that nonprofit, which refurbishes computers, and then they're at cost or at $70 to $80 per device. So we're working with the school districts if there are students that can't afford that to subsidize that as well. In terms of the other questions, we do not require a social security number or a credit card. We also have opened up all of our Cox Wi-Fi hotspots throughout our network. And to number 4, we really don't have much of a rural area in our footprint, but we last year thankfully had invested a lot of money in our network, and we provide gigabit speeds to every single person that is in our network. And our offerings, we've doubled those speeds for our folks as well in our Connect to Compete program. So we have, since this pandemic has started, provided over $8 million statewide, cash and in kind, to help our customers throughout this. So we are a willing partner. We want to do whatever we can to help this committee and to really get closer and bridging that digital divide. So thank you for having us.
Great. Thank you very much, Chanel. We appreciate it. And now we'll go to our last participant, AT&T. And I think from AT&T, we have Susan Santana. Is that correct? Do we have a representative from AT&T? You may be on mute. I do that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Get those 30 seconds back. I was talking. I just want to say thank you, Senator Leyva and Superintendent Thurmond. I'm in the interest of time, I'm going to just do a little quick intro, and then I'd like to just respond to questions really 1 and 4, what we're doing and what we're doing in the rural areas, because questions 2 and 3 have pretty much been responded to, and we're aligning, our answers are very much aligned with the other carriers. First of all, I want to say I hope everybody's families and that you're all staying healthy and safe. But on behalf of our 250,000 AT&T employees, including our 60% unionized labor workforce, and 38,000 of whom of our employees are based here in California, I just want to take a minute to recognize them for their critical and essential work that they're providing day in and day out, just to ensure that our country stays connected, that our first responders stay connected, that our medical professionals, in addition to keeping our educators, our students and our teachers connected during this national pandemic. And in fact, to recognize their hard work, AT&T is giving all of those employees a 20% bonus on top of their regular salary, and also doubling up their paid leave for those who have tested COVID positive. So on regarding the topic of closing the digital divide, this is something that has perplexed policymakers. I've seen for the least a couple of decades. You might not know this. After college, I went back home to South San Diego, Barrio Logan, and I taught bilingual elementary school in a very disadvantaged socioeconomic setting. So we had digital divide issues back then, 20 years ago, and now they've taken on a whole new form in this age, and especially given the COVID health crisis. So the stakes are particularly high, exposing greater a reliance on access, of course, adoption and infrastructure. So just in summary, this is a multifaceted challenge requiring a multi-pronged approach. And it really needs to involve all the components of the entire internet ecosystem, right? So
carriers for connectivity, manufacturers for devices, platform developers, software companies, and a strategic infrastructure plan that's bolstered by common sense public policy. So ISPs are merely one piece of that big puzzle. Now, in terms of specifically addressing question number one, here's some of the steps that we've taken to help provide parents, students, and teachers the new tools that they'll need for this new online and at-home learning environment. Even before COVID, we've been supporting our students and families as they're standing up their technology needs to enable remote learning, something that historically has never been done in our society at this scale, right? So we've announced our Distance Learning Fund and Family Connections Fund. And this is a $10 million national fund that's created particularly to support parents in professional development, teachers, and students with innovative and creative ways to adapt to this new distance learning environment. We continue to accept proposals, so it hasn't, we just recently launched it a couple weeks ago, and so we're continuing to accept proposals, but just in the last couple of weeks, we've announced a $2 million contribution that has been specific to California, including $1 million to Khan Academy, over $750,000 to 4 additional organizations that are based in California with distance learning programs. And these are really all intended to help improve and expand the online learning experience and resources, particularly for those communities that rely on free resources. As you know, we are also working with the governor's office and the state superintendent's office. We've announced initially a $300,000 donation specifically towards Chromebooks. In addition, today, we were authorized to announce another $250,000 towards programming specifically for online learning with a focus on building a more equitable teaching and learning environment, and for professional development as well for the teachers. So in sum, that's about over a $500 million contribution towards improving the digital divide during this COVID environment. And then we've recently announced also our participation in the California Teleconnect Fund. Others have mentioned that. Of course, under this initiative, working with the State Department of Education, they will be providing the devices, we will be providing the discounted mobile data services, particularly to those school districts that do not have access, that have students that do not have access to broadband. So hopefully this will serve as one way of bridging that divide. And then to help tackle the economic divide, because really that is underlying one of the major factors in this, we'll continue to offer our internet access for qualifying low income and limited income households at $10 per month. This is through our Access from AT&T program. And we've expanded the eligibility of this program to include more households, those households that are participating in the National School Lunch Program, as well as the Head Start program. And on top of that, we're offering those customers 2 months of free service, and we've waived all requirements needing credit cards or Social Securities, as was mentioned earlier. And then, of course, AT&T continues to work closely with school districts throughout the state to find ways to save on their unlimited wireless data plans. And those schools that are activating new lines for data-only plans on their school-issued tablets, we are providing the wireless data service at no cost for the next 60 days. And then in terms of devices, while we're not a device manufacturer, we have worked with our suppliers and our vendors to help provide thousands of devices to students up and down the state, including over 3,400 hotspots, over 1,600 Chromebooks, and over about 1,100 USB ports in both rural and urban school districts. And I could provide more details on that after this. So as you've heard, we're not just dipping our toe in this space, but we're really, truly working hard to do our part in a comprehensive manner in support of education for all our communities, especially focused on the disadvantaged communities, while all along supporting our first responders and medical personnel during this unprecedented health crisis. We are also, and not to repeat it, but it's the same pledge, the federal pledge, the Keeping America Connected pledge, waiving extra fees and overages for those folks who don't have the ability to pay during this pandemic. We're keeping all our public Wi-Fi hotspots open. And then we're truly just, we want to offer ourselves as being a collaborative partner to be at the table. And so we're thankful for that. And then I guess the last, I'm going to jump to question 4 just to wrap it up. And that was the question regarding our rural and frontier communities and what we're doing to expand service there. Well, the reality is that it starts with infrastructure, right? So over the past 3 years, we've invested over $8 billion just in wired and wireless technologies here in California. And this is intended to bolster our commitment to low income and rural communities. And this has resulted in an expanded coverage footprint in our rural communities throughout, but we still have work to do, and we're cognizant about that. In addition, we're working with the FCC's National Connect America Fund. And in that vein, part of that commitment, we will have built out advanced broadband services to 141,000 remote and hard to reach California locations. So this is a huge commitment that will be completed before the end of this year. And then of course, we've also encouraged through our work with the CPUC, encouraged them to streamline their process for the $330 million California Advanced Services Fund, which the legislature authorized in 2017 to build out in rural communities so that project applications can be expedited and streamlined. So we've worked very hard to get that done. And then in terms of the specific question on our cow and our coal deployables, we're very focused, while we are very focused on our first responders during this, and focused on quarantine locations, testing, and medical facilities, including the US Navy hospital ship and Sutter Medical Center. But we're always available and certainly happy to talk with officials from any community to address specific needs of a particular area. And I think I'll stop there in the interest of time.
Great, thank you very much, Susan. All right, that concludes our companies that were on to answer questions. I'm now going to open it up to questions from our task force. The first person up is Assemblymember Burke. And I know, ironically enough, she was having some trouble with her internet service. Are you?
I'm back. I am back, and I was having trouble with my internet service. But I did want to say, we're monitoring some of the questions from Facebook Live, especially for us, the questions that have to do with the 62nd district. And it sounds like a lot of you have some great programs that would actually be quite accessible. However, I'm trying to figure out, I haven't really heard how you're promoting them or how you're connecting with low-income communities to make sure that individuals actually know that these programs are available, that you're not going to ask for their credit or to, stringent guidelines to become part of those programs. That's my first question. We also had another set of questions that we're asking about. We have people in our communities that have two families living within the household. Are both families, are they both allowed to utilize those programs? If not, how many devices are allowed to connect to, let's say, a mobile hotspot when you're on these programs? And then the same questions dealing with the education programs. Do you have any idea how many low-income communities are utilizing those programs? How are they accessing those programs? And what does the training look like for the students in those communities and the teachers in those communities so that they can actually utilize those programs?
So I'm going to ask that we have maybe 1 or 2 providers answer this question. If everyone answers it, I'm afraid we'll be here for a very long time. So do I have someone who would like to take a stab at Autumn's questions? Or not?
I mean, this is Carrie at Charter Spectrum, and I think we're doing everything we can through our state government affairs program to educate state, local elected officials and to educate the community partners that we have and to coordinate with school districts to make sure that the information on the programs that we have available is out there and is, available. I think if there are individual organizations or districts that you think we need to be in closer touch with, I would definitely encourage you to let us know. We are putting out of my office out updates on a regular basis to our, like I said, to the elected officials that we work with, to school districts and to community partner organizations to try to get the word out there.
Great, thank you.
I was just going to say, this is Susan with AT&T. We really rely on our army of external affairs managers up and down the state that have local connections and relationships with your districts, with your district staff in terms of getting the word out. But certainly we're open to suggestions in terms of how we can expand that.
Great.
And I will just also say that I think you do have to look at a lot of different ways to communicate. I know that some of the school districts, they are calling, they're trying to get in touch with some of these families and they haven't had success. And I know that that really is an issue. We've just literally shipped some of our promotional materials and flyers at the schools that have outreach where they have people picking up food to make sure that anybody that's driving through there has that information as well in different languages. So, or through PSAs, I think you have to look at a lot of different channels and also working through your local nonprofits.
Right. Everything that's been said is correct. And the singular notion you want to wrap your head around is this notion of the trusted source, right? So whoever the trusted source is in any given community, that might be an elected, that might be a pastor, that might be the school. We work with a lot of nonprofits. So it's this notion of who is the trusted source in that community. And those are the folks that we want to make sure are not only are fluent in what we're doing, but have the ability to communicate that to their constituents.
And I can appreciate that. I will tell you though, that where people are picking up their free lunches is an ideal place, because those are definitely families that need the assistance. They are going there, they're going there, they trust the people handing them their kids their food, and that would give access to families that are really doing everything they can to lift up their families and their children and to make sure that they get everything they need. So I thank you for, I think where kids are picking up lunches is one of the great ideas. And we definitely will reach out to our providers and give you some other names, because you do have some great programs I didn't even know about, but clearly either did the people who are watching because they're asking why they don't know about them. So whatever we can do to help facilitate creating that communication is, I think, extremely important. But thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. I'm going to go to Senator McGuire next, and then Assemblymember Wood and Assemblymember Aguiar-Curry. I know Senator McGuire has to jump on a call with CDCR. Senator McGuire.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you again, Mr. Superintendent, and I'll be very quick. First and foremost, appreciate all of those who are on providing us an update about what they're doing on behalf of Californians. Represent an area with Assemblymember Wood, along with Assemblywoman Aguiar-Curry, that has some of the most underserved communities, not just in the state, but in the West. And just given some examples that Ms. Santana used, I'd like to be able to drill down on some specifics. And by the way, Ms. Santana is new in her position. I'm grateful to work with her, but want to be able to spot check a few items. Number one, when we take a look at what AT&T has invested, that $8 billion, strategically, we need to drill down to see where those investments have been made. If you take a look in particular on the North Coast in Northern California, the only dollars truly that are being spent by AT&T are the Connect America funds, taxpayer dollars that are subsidizing hookups. When we take a look and drill down even further on those Connect America funds on the North Coast, very few of those overall dollars that have been allocated by the federal government are actually being spent in some of the most underserved communities because they are the most remote. So when we talk about the issue of hotspots, when we talk about the issue of devices, it is incredible work that the governor as well as the superintendent is doing. But candidly, a lot of those devices and hotspots simply won't work because of the remote nature of these communities in rural California. Assemblymember Wood and I have been living with the fact that there is only one fiber line that goes from Mendocino County in the south all the way up to Del Norte County. And when AT&T has had a failure of that line, Caltrans backhoe going into the line, a truck pulling it down off of 101, the entire community of the North Coast, 141,000 folks, go down as well. You can't use your ATM. You can't go to the grocery store to use your credit card machine. I use this as an example of being very honest and blunt. There have been a lot of proposals that have been advanced by local communities for small independent providers to be able to move forward on small projects, as well as government issued plans, and local cities and or county would run it, and AT&T has fought it. So what I would hope is that there is going to be a sincere effort by all involved to be able to come to the table and help these underserved communities that are among the poorest in the nation, for sure the poorest in the state, and the least connected. And that's more of a comment than a question, not at all directly personal to Ms. Santana. I'm looking forward to working with her. She's been wonderful and incredibly accessible, by the way, Madam Chair, but just want to make sure that we're able to drill down on those numbers because they sound good, but there's still major gaps on our most underserved communities.
And we will continue working with your office very closely to get to the bottom of those numbers and also to identify any other barriers that might exist, whether they're regulatory or otherwise. But absolutely, we'll work with your office.
Very good. Thank you both. We're going to move to Assemblymember Wood on the phone. I think Assemblymember Wood is still with us.
Oh, now I just got unmuted. Thank you. I just want to align myself with the comments made by Senator McGuire, and we do really struggle. And I know that while we're hearing a lot of great programs that are bringing connectivity to folks in large urban areas, those simply don't work in areas where you don't have the infrastructure, and that's our frustration. So when you hear numbers that 94% of people that are we have 94% of rural America or California or whatever you want to say covered, that isn't our district. That actually what we would be striving for, and as legislators, we did this, is we want 95% coverage in every county in California. And, you got, 95% of the people live in 5% of the land mass in California, and the rest of us live elsewhere. And so these hotspots, while they're great, if you've got something to bounce them off of, they're completely, my understanding, don't work in areas where you don't have any signal at all. So I worry that in the time it's going to take for the infrastructure to come up, those folks in rural California that don't have access now are not going to have access anytime in the future. So that's those are the solutions I'm looking for, and I hope that we can get there, and the sooner the better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember. Next, we're going to go to Assemblymember Aguiar-Curry. Cecilia?
Trying to get unmuted here. Hi, thank you very much. So I have numerous providers in my district, from Comcast, AT&T, and Frontier. And while we're talking about connecting our schools to broadband, we must ensure connectivity for distance learning, and families must sign up themselves to take advantage of the array of programs being set by all you providers. Can you give us a sense of how many new customers have signed up since the governor's shelter order? And do you have any way to track which of these families have done so for the purposes of education? It's important information that we need to figure out which families are still signing up and where, so we can identify gaps, especially where they may be hotspots for large numbers of children being left behind. That's one of my questions. And I know I also agree totally with Senator McGuire and Assemblymember Wood. We have fought this for 5 years since I've been in the Assembly, and will continue to do so. But the frustration that when we hear about 95% of the state is covered, AB 1665 asked specifically what the mapping looked like, and I believe Rob probably has that information. But CPUC was doing a whole study through the state of California to realize how many areas were covered by different providers. So I'm anxious to get that as well. Do you have any comments to that?
This is Susan. I would just commit to getting you at least a ballpark figure to try and identify how many numbers of families have joined, since these programs are fairly new and fairly recent, but I will commit to getting that back to you. And, you know, and AT&T, just as all the other carriers, I'm sure, are also extremely committed to the build out, because if it's not the pandemic, it's the wildfires, right? So we're also planning for the future. And that's where we'll go back to your offices, if we may, to really enlist your support in massaging some of the local opposition that some of our site builds face. So that's something that I'd love to work with you closer on as well.
Great. And Rob, if you're available, I know you were trying to do some mapping with CPUC and Martha. Is that information available? I think we lost him, maybe?
Possibly.
Okay. I'm interested in getting that particular bit of information. And also I wanted to ask Rob, the CPUC has the money for the internet. I was wondering, do you know where that money's coming from and how it's going to be distributed? Those are my questions, and I guess he's still not here. Just because we don't have enough time, I have other questions, and if I could submit them to you, Mr. Thurmond, and that we could get answers offline, that would be very helpful.
You bet. We're happy to oblige and get you those.
Okay. Others want to get on. I know people are on a time constraint.
Thank you, Assemblymember Aguirre-Curry. So that is the last of our questions. We do have a hard stop at 6 for technology reasons. Before I go back to Superintendent Thurmond, because I know he has some questions, we would like to name Assemblymember Wood, Assemblymember Aguirre-Curry, and Senator McGuire to a subcommittee on rural technology. They didn't know that, so that's a surprise to them, but we think they'll do it. So
privilege to do so.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We want to make sure plenty of work to do. So with that, Superintendent, I'd like to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. I like how you work. And thank you to our colleagues for being willing to head up that subcommittee that addresses rural technology issues. And that means that all the ISPs that presented today, we will expect you to be working with that subcommittee. You know, 2 quick questions. You know, I want to get back to the issue of how do families in the state find out about these programs. And a question really to each of the providers, a simple yes, no, or I don't know will suffice. It seems to me that all the ways you said are great, but we all get our information through a couple different ways: TV, radio, social media. And so I'm asking if you all are willing to commit to some kind of a fund to help underwrite the ability to communicate to families that you can be supported with all these wonderful options that you have through TV, radio, social media, an 800 number, a combination of the above. I'll just ask in order, and you can say yes, no, or I don't know. Susan from AT&T.
I would love to go back and say yes to that, but of course I'll need to figure it out internally. But count us as a active participant and want to work with you on it.
Thank you. For charter, Carrie.
Similarly situated, we'd love to continue the conversation and see, you know, if that could work.
Thank you. For Comcast, Beth or Karima.
Would love to have the conversation. Agree with you that we're up in some of those mediums already. So would love to talk about what you're thinking about.
Thank you. For Cox, Chanel.
love to continue the conversation. We are running PSAs. We are on social media promoting this. We are working with school districts on paper and making calls, but we're willing to have more discussions for sure.
Thank you. And for Verizon, Heidi. Holding in case Heidi is trying
Sorry,
to.
yeah, I'm still here. I apologize. Yeah, we are robustly advertising all of our COVID-19 responses on social media in more than one language as well, and have pushed it out to many of the folks who are on this part of this task force discussion as well for dissemination to your constituencies. We'll continue to do that, but very happy to continue a discussion about how we can improve and lean in even more.
Thank you. You know, each of you in your remarks referenced the need for the ISPs to work together. And so for those reasons is why I'm asking, while I'm calling the question, whether or not you're willing to add resources to support how we get the word out. This task force will be meeting again next week. And I'm hopeful that you all will be able to give us an answer, your yes, no, or I don't know, by the time that the task force meets next week, because it seems to me that you have great things to offer. Getting the word out about it is critical. My final question to the members of our panel of internet service providers. I do thank you for presenting today. I thank you for taking our questions. One final question to each of you. And again, I'll just go through the list again. I'll go in reverse order and start with Heidi and work my way through the list this time. The question is two-part. It is, are you willing to work with this task force? But before you answer, I want you to know that working with this task force means that you will be needed to go above and beyond the many things that you talked about today. And so I just have to be honest that even with the great offerings that are being offered, we still see huge gaps in connectivity that you heard about today. And so that means if we just do what we've always done, we will get the same result that we've always gotten. And that means we'll need new ways to get above it and beyond. And so the question is, again, yes, no, or I don't know. Are you willing to work with this task force? We'll start with Verizon, first with Heidi Barsuglia.
Yes, very willing. We think that the response to this crisis and other crises is dynamic, ongoing, very happy to lean in, have a discussion, partner, collaborate, not only with the state and this task force, but with our ISP colleagues as well.
Thank you, Heidi. For Cox, Chanel Hawken.
Yeah, I agree with what Heidi said.
Thank you. Ditto's work here too. I'll take that as a yes. Thank you. For Comcast, either Beth or Karima.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. For Charter, Carrie.
Of course.
Thank you. And for AT&T, Susan.
Yes, and I would just add, if there's an opportunity to expand the group, right? As I started in my earlier comments, this is a multi-pronged approach. And it's not just ISPs, but also software companies, social media companies, manufacturers, et cetera. If we could have a broader tent, that might even be more effective, just as a recommendation.
We agree and we accept your amendment. We know that there are many who wish to participate. The members of the task force will be discussing this at the meeting next week and getting into more detail about how people may participate. Again, Digital Divide Task Force at cde.ca.gov is the way to express interest. And again, we thank all of the internet service providers for what you presented today and your willingness to work with the task force going forward. I thank all my colleagues in the legislature and those who presented from CPUC. Our steps going forward will be establishing some subcommittees, as we did today. As my co-chair announced, we now have a subcommittee focused on addressing rural issues. Clearly, this is an area that needs more work. It's been an issue that's been discussed for years and decades. We're saying now it's time to move with urgency to close the gap on some of those issues in the rural communities. Our task force will identify any legislative steps that may be taken to help to move this work. We'll identify any budgetary needs that must be costed out. And essentially, we'll create a plan for what it will take to close the digital divide once and for all, and a timeline for how to implement that plan. And so this is a high-level overview of what we can expect. And our task force will be making recommendations on what we need to happen to close the divide that will include recommendations on what we're asking our partners in technology to do. And so I want to say thank you again to all of our internet service providers who presented today, to our technology companies who presented today, to our school districts for their presentations, to the legislators who serve on this task force, and to my co-chair, Senator Leyva, for her work. This concludes this first meeting of the task force, and we look forward to the work going forward. Thank you on behalf of our 6 million students in the great state of California.
Thanks, everybody.